Good evening, everybody. I am Pranati Kodicharla, the Executive Board Member of IEEE CBIT. I hope you all are staying safe and doing well. I extend a warm welcome to all the participants in this meeting to the IEEE CBIT Masterclass 2.0 by CBIT alumni. After two very successful episodes, we are back with the highly requested third episode of this series. I take this opportunity to thank Dr. Ravindra Reddy Sir, Principal of CBIT, our faculty in charge, Mr. G. Mallikarjuna Rao Sir and Mr. Arvind Babu Sir for their support. I also thank Satvika Reddy, President, Ananya Vedala, Vice President, and the entire core committee of IEEE CBIT for giving a platform to students to clarify their doubts and constantly work towards their achieving their goals. Now, I am very excited to introduce our speaker for today, Abhijeet Purkar, who graduated from CBIT in 2020. Mr. Abhijeet Purkar is a gold medalist from the Mechanical Engineering Department, placed as an engineer executive in Unilever. He then chose to change his path towards data analytics. He received admits from engineering management programs at Cornell University, Purdue University, the University of Southern California, and Duke University, and also from the Urban Analytics program of New York University. He accepted the offer from Carnegie Mellon University to pursue a master's degree in information systems management in the business intelligence and data analytics track. On the other hand, he was extraordinary in the non-academic side as well. He is a notable playback singer. He was also the editor-in-chief of Transcendent and the president of the Student Association of CBIT. Hello, Abhijeet. Thank you so much for joining despite your busy schedule.
Not at all. That was a very kind introduction. Thank you for that.
And firstly, congratulations on getting these amazing admits from some of the world's finest colleges. And how are your preparations going on?
Thank you. It feels great. Almost overwhelming that, a lot of top colleges would consider me for the admission. In fact, choosing one out of these was a tough thing to do. In fact, I took a lot of time. I took almost a month to narrow it down to CMU. I almost lost a chance to go for MS because the second wave hit at the time when visa slots were opening up. So I'm just glad right now that I have got this opportunity to actually fly to the States. So yeah, it's been very chaotic at home. We realized that I actually have a shot of going at in the US like 20 days ago when my visa appointment was finally confirmed. So it's been all about packing and vaccinations, medical stuff, all of that. But yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting to pursue this degree at CMU.
So when anyone looks at your profile, the first thing that comes to their mind is definitely how consistent you have been from the first year, and you have been achieving so much from then itself. So how did you stay motivated from the beginning and achieve so much?
Well, I think it comes down to the mindset that you enter your college with, right? So, as a fresher, as a first year student at CBIT, I had a template in mind, right? Thanks to all of my seniors, my then seniors who were kind enough to really enlighten me with all of this information. So the general template they gave me was that, your first year is all about your academics, your second year is all about exploring the clubs, third year is about cementing your place in these clubs and finding internships and all of that, and finally it is all about your projects, placements, and your GRE and CAT and whatever gate preparations. So with that in mind, colleges became slightly easier. It's almost very daunting, when you first step into college. But with this kind of a template in mind, from which I got from a lot of my seniors, I had a clear roadmap, right? That first year is all about, just put your head down and continue your momentum from what you had, and in your inter days, just focus on your academics because you won't get a chance after that. And then I delved into the clubs later on. My motivation just has been, to bring out the best in me, right? I mean, these self-defined goals that we have of, getting this job or getting this much GPA, that if you keep that as your motivation, the end product as your motivation, I don't think you're going to get very far. If your sole motivation is that I want to be the best version of myself, I don't want to let myself down, I think nothing is a better motivation for you. So that has been my, prime go-to motive since the day I started college, and it is still It's the same until today as well.
Those were some really inspiring words. And when you mentioned about having a roadmap, having a set targets that we want to achieve for ourselves instead of looking at just the final thing, I think that will inspire a lot of us to, set targets for ourselves. Yeah. Now, being a gold medalist in your department and topping it for so many years consecutively, do you have any tips for students who probably started off with a little less CG and now they want to improve themselves?
Right. I would just like to start with the fact that your CGPA is probably the most important thing. I mean, there are many people who say otherwise, but it really comes down to your CGPA. I mean, people do tell us ki work hard until your JE, and after that it's all fun and game. But honestly, your undergrad is the last place where your GPA will matter. When you go for your masters, which I'm realizing now, it's not really about your GPA. It's all about your projects and the kind of networking that you do and the internships and all of that. So, unless some of the people in this meeting still had doubts about maintaining a high GPA, your GPA will still matter. And in a world where we are competing against, branded colleges, NITs with people and all of that, your GPA will really help you stand out. And once you have that ingrained in your mind, things will actually become easier. You just know, it's a non-negotiable. A good GPA, getting good marks is a non-negotiable when you come to college. So that's that. I would just like to start with that. But for people who were joining the party slightly late, I have a couple of things in mind. First things is that don't neglect your mids and your assignments, right? What we have is a very holistic way of marking. Our college has that system, and what usually happens is that people end up really underestimating your mids and your assignments. And they have, I'm guessing that the distribution is still 30-70, and those 30 marks seem all that much relevant when you're appearing for your NSEMs. When you enter the final semester exams with a 25 plus score, it's almost like you have the momentum, to carry on into your NSEMs. So that's one. And secondly, you have got your, 80-20 principle. Often we realize that now that I have passed college, I know this for a fact that a lot of your questions, 80% of your questions, they end up coming from these select topics, not 20%, but 20, 25, 30%. And what usually happens that we end up missing out on these topics. We give it our every chapter, all of the 5 chapters get our equal effort, get our equal energy. But sometimes it is that, a couple of units are just all that much more important and they become like the link to other units as well. So this is where you have to maybe talk to your faculty, talk to your seniors, just get a gist of what this subject holds when it comes to your exams, right? And you guys have a great facility. We have a great facility at our library where all the previous year question papers are there. And believe you me, you will be surprised when you realize how many questions actually are repeated, how many topics in general are repeated. Questions may not be repeated, but you realize you get the examiner's point of view when you go through the question paper. So something to keep in mind. And one final tip is just spend 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes on the subject every day. And when I say spend time, I mean just think about what the teacher has taught yesterday, what has happened today, where do we stand when it comes to the syllabus completion? Are we there at 3 units, 4 units in, right? And just one final thought is often it so happens that one or two subjects every semester are the ones that we don't like, right? Maybe the faculty is not teaching it right, or the subject just sounds very dumb, or maybe it's just one credit course, and we don't take it seriously. And it has happened with me as well. I don't want to name the subjects, but every semester there is an odd subject which I'm not motivated by at all. But well, there are a couple of things that you can do about that. You can try to generate interest in that subject externally. I have seen a lot of my seniors do that as well, and I've taken these tips from my friends studying at other colleges. So you can you can make it a point to ask a question to your faculty when the subject is being taught. That is one. And this is something that I do. I make a list of the scope that uh, the subject has for you, right? How is this subject going to be relevant for you? Clearly, some thought has been put in by your academics council to include the subject in your semester. So what is that? will this subject really help me? Will this subject help me ace other subjects in the future? And often so that is the case, right? So go through that, and I'm sure you'll find the slightest of motivations to, open the book and, just go through that subject, give it another try.
Hearing you, I'm sure the audience is kind of assessing how they have been preparing so far and may try to make some modifications. And I like how you mentioned about first generating an interest and then going forward, because, sometimes if we just start off with zero motivation, we just end up procrastinating too much and it may feel like a burden. So that was a great tip. And alongside a stellar academic and placement record, you took part in a lot of club activities as well. So, how did you manage your time and did you have a strategy?
Did I have a strategy? Well, I keep coming back to these pearls of wisdom that my seniors gave me, right? So the senior, she told me that in college you have a lot of flexibility. You can do anything, but you can't do everything, right? So you have to go in with a clear mindset as to what is exactly that you want to go in with. So as I mentioned, this template, where first year is all about your academics, your second year is about, exploring the clubs. So one thing that I have kept in mind is that academics has always been at the nucleus of my college lifestyle, right? So it's at the center, and everything else sort of revolves around it, right? And it's kind of important because I've seen my friends, who didn't exactly have the strategy, and once something goes wrong in academics, they didn't score well in a subject, or they ended up getting a supply or a backlog. It starts affecting their club lives as well. It's like a cascading effect. It's like a chain reaction, which is why you have to make it a point that your academics always stay, central to your college life, and everything else kind of just works it out. And when you enter college with that mindset, in your head, you've already given 50% of your time for academics, right? And the rest 50% of your time is now devoted to clubs. Now, this is where you make a personal choice. How many clubs can I fit into this whatever time that is left? Because as we know that clubs are as important, if not more, than what your GPA is. And your clubs look even more. Your clubs look legit when you have a good GPA, right? So clubs are important. It helps you explore yourself, different facets of you. So for me, my second year was about really exploring the club. So I knew that music is a thing for me. I have been an aspiring musician, up until, in fact, high school. I thought I may as well take it as a career choice, but that's a story for a different time. So music for me, so being a part of Chaitanya Geeti, Chaitanya Vada, that was like non-negotiable for me. So one club was already set for me, and secondly, I've always wanted to, delve into uh, literary clubs. I was not a very good writer. I hadn't been into a lot of literary activities since 10th grade. So that was yet another thing that I wanted to delve into. So that opened, my doors to clubs like Communicando, Transcendent, Toastmasters, MUN, etc. And I, in fact, ended up joining both Communicando and Transcendent. And then comes the evaluation, right? How are you liking the clubs? Do you like what the clubs are doing, right? Do you want to continue with the club? And I realized with Communicando that probably wasn't the case. It's a great club, but somehow it just didn't fit with what I wanted to do with my college time, right? And I basically quit Communicando after 2 months. And that brings me to yet another point. Don't be afraid to say no, or don't be afraid to quit things, start things and quit things. Second year, third year, it's all about, you exploring things in college. You may feel like you've committed to a club, so you probably have to carry on, but that's not the case at all, right? So keep that in mind. And anything else, I guess. I've spoken about time management, right? Okay. So my final year was a pretty rough trip for me because being a part of this, being the president of student association, that was hectic. That was almost a roller coaster. So one thing that really helped me in my final year, being a part of a lot of clubs, was to start your day with a daily planner. You know, you get up in the morning. I would get up at 6, and by 7, I would sit down and make a list of things that I had to do. Like I would get up, I would write, get meet the sponsors for Mechanica, or get room permissions for the Transcendent meetings, or prepare this song for this upcoming competition. and on and so forth. It's funny when you actually write things down, early in the morning, there's almost this pressure to do it, it's like a productivity hack. It works sometimes it doesn't, but most often it does. So that's that's like the one final hack that I can leave you with.
Some great insights regarding learning to say no when you really are not into it, and it saves a lot of time and you're doing something that you're actually interested in. And productivity tips and all, I'm sure the students are already taking down notes now.
I
Coming
mean,
to
I'm no
some
productivity expert, but if you guys want to delve more deeper into all of this, I would recommend the book Atomic Habits. I've actually started reading it, and it talks about exactly these things. So just a tip for the students here.
Awesome. Actually, right now, the placement season is going on and people are very stressed out about it. But especially students in the non circuit branches, they are generally in a dilemma whether they want to stick with their core branch or do they want to apply for jobs in IT. And each of them are so different that they have to focus only on one. So, what advice would you give them and how should they make that choice?
Okay, that brings me back to my college days when everybody was freaking out about these IT jobs that people were getting into. So yes, there's always peer pressure. There is real peer pressure, Your friends are already landing jobs, and all of a sudden you want to get a job out of peer pressure and, not your own motivation. So I think this dilemma comes down to your self-awareness, right? I can tell you, you can go and ask your seniors placed in TCS, Accenture, and all of these companies, and get to know the pros and cons of these jobs, these IT jobs. Are they really the right fit for you? But what it really comes down to is one question, how passionate are you about your core field? You know, Remind yourself as to the reasons why you have joined this particular branch in the first place. I have two very interesting stories about this, with my classmates. So one of my classmates was a very bright boy. He was in the top three of his class, and I would go to him to solve, to get a few things cleared out. Very passionate about engineering, wanted to have a career in thermal or design engineering. And unfortunately, as it so happened that he could not land the core jobs that year, a couple of companies actually didn't end up coming, so that reduced his opportunities in the first place. So he had two options. He could have either gone for an IT job or he could have persevered for core jobs, and he did the latter. He basically took the year off. He applied for gates. He gave the gate exam, and he's right now studying at IIT Kanpur, doing thermal engineering. So this story really should inspire people who don't know if their field is worth it or not, because there are opportunities, there is stuff to explore, and you can always you just have to gamble on yourself and your interest in the field. And there's yet another story. There's a similar guy who also was interested in core jobs, and he also had a chance to go into IT jobs and or wait for the core jobs. But his situation was such that his family was dependent on him landing a job, right? So for him, getting any job was a criteria, right? So he ended up taking the IT job anyway. So this brings me to the point that taking a break and working on your dream, working on your core is a privilege, right? So talk it over with your parents, what their expectations are. If they give you the green signal as to, go, follow your dreams, take some time off, explore your field, there's nothing like it. That's a privilege that you guys should definitely take up.
Well, I think a lot of students who are like really, really interested, they should definitely, give it a thought and not just jump to IT for a short-term success, or, they
Mhm.
have to think long-term if they're really interested. Now, you worked as a supply chain engineer at Unilever, and was it on or off campus? And how did you end up with that job?
It was on campus actually. For all of you in fourth year right now, I think HUL has already sent the notification as far as I know. Last time I checked with some of the final year students. So yes, it's one of the most sought after core companies in CBIT because I mean just because of the tag. The job role varies from factory to factory, but just the tag of being the largest FMCG company makes it that much more attractive. So it was an on-campus job. What happens is it's technically on campus. So CBIT is one of the colleges that HUL has decided to call for a pool campus drive, right? So we get the invitation. They ask for the database for all the students in core engineering, and we send them the database. They call top 5 or top 7 students from the class, not students, top 5 boys, top 5 girls. So more like 10 students from a class, right? So they send an application form to be filled out where you have to talk about your motivations to do a factory job, your 5-year plans, your 10-year plans, an ethical question somewhere here about, some moral issue that you have come over, that you have, faced in your life. So this application is like the second hurdle, the second level of scrutiny. The first is your GPA anyway. You have to be in the top 10 of your class. The second is this application where they check, how much clarity of thought you have. And if you clear these both, you're called to Chennai, where you're competing against a lot of other people from similar, top-rated colleges of their cities. So my experience over here was pretty daunting because uh, all the placements that I've had before HUL at that time were in college, right? So I was just going up against my own, batchmates. So it was all fun and games. But all of a sudden, you're competing up against the best of, their college, and it was pretty nerve-wracking. Um, the first round over there in Chennai was technical, so not a lot of interaction there. But then came the group discussion, and I was faced with these top people from their respective colleges, and it was slightly intimidating. But as the group discussion went ahead, and people started putting their points forward, I realized that they're people at the end of the day. They're also nervous, equally nervous as me. So the group discussion got cleared, and then came two technical interviews and one HR interview. The technical interview there was, I think, one of the most, if not the most difficult technical interview that I've been a part of, right? There were behavioral questions, there were technical questions, there were situation-based questions, uh, it's a factory role at the end of the day. So they ask you to give different scenarios in a factory, and then they ask you how would you respond to a particular scenario like that, right? Right. And then comes the HR interview where they just want to make sure that you're a right fit for the company, if you can go, well along people or not.
So, when you mention a technical round, do you use your concepts that were taught in college, or is it a totally different preparation that you need to do?
Yes, I mean, what you are taught in college certainly lays the foundation for what is being asked in the interviews. There are some very theoretical questions, like you say thermodynamics, they're asking me, what is entropy? What's the relation between entropy and enthalpy? What's the Gibbs free energy equation? So there are theoretical questions, but at the same time, there are also application-based questions. So I had POM, Production and Operations Management, as a subject in third year. It talks about industrial operations, reducing bottlenecks, and all of that. So I was asked an application-oriented question based on that. That if you're introducing a new product on a line, and say that a new machine has been put on the line to reduce the bottlenecks, what are the steps that you would take to make sure that the machine is placed in a way that your capital costs are also low, and at the same time you're not losing out on the labor. So application-oriented questions are equally asked in these kind of interviews, and the one thing that goes in your favor is that they ask you right up front, what is your favorite subject, and then they grill you over that, right? And although operations management, supply chain, these are some of the common topics. So anybody who wishes to, apply for HUL, brushing up supply chain and operations topics is really going to help you.
I think that answers that. And did you have like any additional source of preparation apart from like revising your notes? Or how did you go about the preparation for this company?
Right. I mean, apart from my what was taught in college, you have a lot of handbooks available in market. There is this handbook by Arihant for mechanical engineering. It's like a pocket book, not just for job interviews, but also if you're interested in cracking gate exams. It really makes sure that your fundamentals are solid, all topics, all levels of questions, definitions, and all of that. So I think that's like a go-to book for anybody who's who's just started preparing for job interviews.
I think we'll put it in the chat box so that people can
Yeah,
refer to.
absolutely.
Moving on. So, how was your experience working there, and what all technologies did you work with?
Okay, so working in a factory was a mixed bag. The first month of being in a factory, so I was in the Gandhidham factory, the Lakme Lever factory. So they make Lifebuoy, Lux, Head and Shoulders, Dove. You must be familiar with these kind of products. So yeah, that's what was being made in my factory. The first month was all rosy, and I was just so excited to see all these new processes. But after a point, it becomes very hectic because you're working 6 days a week, and you're involved, suddenly given the responsibility for the entire factory, right? That can be pretty intimidating upfront. My role, okay, I'll talk about my role in two parts. One is my day-to-day activities, and the other would be my project. So my day-to-day activities were related to process management. So I was working in a factory which made the distilled fatty acids, which is like a prime ingredient for soaps. I think engineers would know that. So that had to do a lot with me learning the basic chemistry of soaps and what is going on in 42 different components of the entire factory. So that was pretty, I mean, I wouldn't call it challenging. I would just say I was not very interested in chemistry right, from my first year. And this was like karma hitting me back in my face. So it was not something that I was looking forward to. Although it did get better once the basic chemistry part was done. I was learning about, process control. There was this thing called SCADA, which is like an automated process control. So my challenge is to know the process parameters for each and every, as I said, 42 steps of the factory, right? What if one of these steps goes wrong? What are the countermeasures for something like that? What if there's a safety incident, right? What do you do when you have to shut down a factory? What do you do when you have to start up a factory? How do you solve problems between people? How do you manage shifts? How do you plan to buy oil from your supplier? So this was a part of my daily duties. What was also a part of my portfolio was to manage innovations across the factory. And this is where the data analytics part came into place, right? So we were trying to reduce the defects on the line, right? And how do you do that? Do you put a person who, watches thousand soaps, fly by, him, or do you put a machine? And obviously, it was an automated machine vision system that we placed on the factory line. So that is where that's my first taste of real analytics, right? I had some experience in college, but working with a programmer and helping him, do feature extraction, helping him scrape the data from other Unilever factories, and making some sense of this, immense data that we would generate in a day. It was all very interesting and kind of made the foundation of why I, decided to go into analytics in the first place. But apart from that, I also had some projects in heat exchangers and manufacturing excellence, world class manufacturing, all of that.
So that's how you slowly started figuring out that data analytics is your thing and you're actually enjoying that part.
Yeah, that
So,
would be.
yeah. So do you recommend students to actually work and figure out themselves and which field they are really interested in? Do you recommend people to actually go on field and decide whether they like?
Absolutely. Yes, yes. So, working in the field, in the industry, will do either of two things. It will either burst your bubble that you've had about, a particular industry, or it will, just cement your liking for that industry, and you will end up, either working a lot more or do a master's course in the same thing. So for me, it was a bit of both. I loved working, in factories. I still love working in factories, and even when I end up doing my data analytics course, the focus would be implementation of these principles in factory lines in operations, right? So yes, I do recommend them working in the industry. It does also add enough value to their profiles, and if their work experience is relevant, it will also add value to their MS applications.
Now talking about applying at universities, when you started applying for data analytics programs, being from a mechanical background, you may not have a lot of projects or anything in the data analytics field at that point. So how did you go about with your application process?
Right. So, fortunately for me, this program is into both data analytics and management, right? So when you say management, they look at your leadership potential, they look at all these, managerial experience that you've had. So that one box was ticked, pretty conclusively for me. Now coming to the first part, in analytics, I obviously didn't have a lot of experience going in. I had one project at Unilever, but that's when I realized that for viewers who don't know, data analytics is anywhere between like sorting a data alphabetically in your Excel sheet to applying a machine learning model, for predictive analysis. Two ends and everything in between is data analytics. So I started contemplating back on my work experience and my projects if I've had something to do with this. And I realized I actually did, and I made sure to derive as much value as possible from these experiences. For example, I was working at Tata Lockheed Martin. So that's where I undertook a Six Sigma project. So Six Sigma is all about quality and factory management, but I was working with a lot of operational data, and I had to basically plot the data on charts and figure out breakdown patterns and all of that for my report. Now that is data visualization, which is also a part of your data analytics. And I had a project briefly. I had a project in convolutional neural networks where we were trying to apply machine vision systems to do CFD analysis for 2D steady state flow. That project didn't go through because we realized we couldn't get the code, but I at least got my recommended to speak about that project in his LORs. And finally, as the president of Student Association, when the pandemic hit, we were faced with a lot of unprecedented challenges. And I remember college administration decided to hold offline exams for us, and that was not a very well thought out move, and it was up to the student association to do something, put out survey forms and revert in a day or two as to why this decision is actually not good. And that's when I used a lot of survey forms, and I reviewed third and pre-final and final year students, and I basically had to derive a lot of data insights from whatever responses I got. And thankfully I was able to do that, getting data of students who were in red zones, who were outside the country, who didn't have any hostels to come back to, who were already tested positive in COVID and were in quarantine. So it's data like that that really helped us convince the management to have online exams instead. So so things like that uh, I mean, one would say that it's not serious analytics work. I was not working on, like a PyTorch or, the actual pandas and NumPy, but it is data analytics, of a kind. And at the end of the day, they're just looking at your aptitude. How do you work with data, without any sort of a background with data analytics? Are you able to make sense out of unstructured data is what they're looking for, right? So yeah, that's how I played with minimal projects that I had in this field.
When you talk about, like, in spite of your roles not being very data analytic inclined, but how you are finding value with whatever you did and making an application out of it, I think a lot of students will understand that you don't have to be a data analyst intern to get that program. So you can
Oh, absolutely. Yes, yes. So I'm really glad that this message was being made clear through what I just said. You just need a bit of programming knowledge. You need statistics. You need, some domain expertise. For me, that was industrial engineering. So data science, data analysis is, it's like a intersection of these three fields. So with some sort of programming background, some sort of statistics background, and some domain expertise, all of us, any of you can, get into data analytics.
That's quite a motivation for a lot of students who probably didn't get into CSC in spite of trying. They can still keep doing it in their own way. That's a really good thing. So, when did you first get the idea of doing a master's degree, and what are the steps involved, and how soon should we start with the process?
All right. So the first step, as I mentioned earlier, for me was the project that I did at Unilever, right? So I was blown away by that project, and I realized that this is something that I want to do, right? So what do I do next? Do I wait for a similar project to come up in my company, or do I actually, pursue a degree into it. Now, the former option was slightly unsafe because waiting for a project means that you're at the mercy of, your company. What if there's no analytics project in the future? So I thought, going for a degree in analytics was the next step. And obviously, the bubble was burst right the next day. And I started asking myself, am I really suited for a data analytics job? So I did a lot of research, in my free time, and I basically found out the requirements for a degree, right? It's funny how some students actually end up going into a degree or think of applying before even realizing the prerequisites, right? So data analytics, as I said, has some prerequisites like programming knowledge in C, C++, or any other object-oriented language. You need to have some background in mathematics, and our college gives us that. So M1, M2, M3, that's a really strong foundation in maths. Statistics is just an added advantage. Some background in AI, some background, any introductory course in machine learning. So that's what I realized. These were the prerequisites to get into an MS course. And then I basically just made a list of 10 colleges that, top 10 colleges that, give a degree in data analytics. The other process, the subsequent process was very complicated, but in essence, I understood the first thing that really mattered to me was like the program costs, the scholarships that they give, the career outcomes, the average salaries after the program, the geographic location of the particular university, and of course what the alumnus are currently doing. So I also reached out to a lot of alumnus on LinkedIn, and some of them were gracious enough to reply and give their experience, their testimonial of the degree, and that helped me narrow down these 10 colleges to 5 colleges. And at the end of the day, I also added engineering management programs just as a safe side, because somebody with my profile who's been into core engineering and has been in the industry as well is very well suited. I mean, almost tailor made for engineering management program. So for me, that was like my safety net, right? So when you do apply for MS, you have to have ambitious college, you need to have safe colleges. So for me, the ambitious ones were like CMU, NYU. I didn't get into Columbia, but that's also a great data analytics program. And of course, the safety net was engineering management programs.
Okay, so for a student who wants to immediately start off with a master's degree later on, when should they start preparing for their competitive exams, or did you give any competitive exams? Because a lot of colleges have been waiving GRE, so did you have to give GRE anyways?
Right. So fortunately, again, I had given my GRE back in 2019, just in case. So that was not much of a problem. I already had a score in hand. So, okay, now this question really depends on when the student decides to pursue a master's degree, right? If they decide in December, it's probably too late because, the applications start closing by January first week. That's when the first round closes in, and you want to apply in the first round if you want to be considered for scholarships, right? But if the student has decided, say, in April or May, then I would say that it's not pretty late, assuming that the student has not done any kind of prep, they have not given their GRE, their university research is left, and, projects are still under process. So yes, starting out in April or May from scratch is probably not so bad. You can give your GRE. It takes about 2 to 3 months to prepare for your GRE. It takes a month and a half for SOP preparation. Parallelly, you have to do your LOR work as well. And TOEFL or IELTS is also something that you can consider. So all in all, it does take you 4 to 5 months if you want a solid application, fine tune it, give it to your seniors for review, take some feedback, make corrections. All of that takes 4 to 5 months. So yes, 4 to 5 months before the first round deadline is the least time you need to give for your applications.
Just for a clarification, you mean that just exactly around 10 to 11 months before the admission applications are sent out, we need to start off with our preparations. Was the April meant in such a way?
Oh, right, right. So I'm just gonna give you a general date for applications closing, first round applications closing, and that is January 1st, right? So these US colleges usually, they wait for Christmas and New Year break, and as soon as that is done, Jan first week is when they start reviewing applications. Your deadline is done there. So, in my opinion, 6 months at least in advance, you should start preparing for your applications. And if you're in college, slightly earlier because you already have a lot of college load, you have project work, GPA and all of that. So yeah, 6 to 7 months minimum.
So, how much do you think a GPA will matter when you're applying at universities? Will it be like a huge factor where they may just reject a candidate because of a GPA?
Well, colleges really make it a point to not do that, to not reject somebody based on their GPA. I'll just like to briefly tell you the four categories the four or pillars of your application that admissions team really look at. So that there's your academics, there's your extracurriculars, there's your leadership potential, and then there's your work experience. Work experience includes internships and projects. Okay. So your academics is like the average of your GRE and your GPA, right? So that's the general rule. Some colleges like Dartmouth, for example, they only look at one. You just need to have one good score, one good GPA or one good GRE. Like one of my juniors last year, she got into Dartmouth and her GRE was stellar, and her GPA was somehow not the best, but just based on the GRE, she was able to make it. Then there are some colleges like Cornell, right? They value GPA a lot. So they need a minimum 8.0 GPA. Otherwise, you'll probably not make the cut. You may have a 340 GRE and it will not matter to them. Right. So it depends from uni to uni. Blogs on Yorkit and on Quora really help you, narrow down your university. It's really by the end of third year, you already know where you stand, right? So it's good if you do your research beforehand, right? And just not apply to universities that you know are going to be biased based on your GPA.
Okay.
And just
So,
on a final note, if you do have good internships, good extracurriculars, and projects, you may as well gamble on yourself and apply instead of in spite of having a low GPA, hoping that they would consider the gravity that these other pillars will also add to your application.
so yes, there's like this huge spectrum of colleges and how they want to shortlist candidates. So students have to research, and there are always options available. So yeah, that was a motivating factor for a lot of students who uh, may not be able to maintain a CG. So, this is a question from the audience. So, do master's programs require individual subject GRE scores? So, how is that necessary?
Okay, I've heard some of them actually asking for subject GREs, but from all the 10 programs that I applied and all of my friends have also been applying in this past year, I don't think any of them have actually asked. So I'm guessing MEM or analytics are not the kind of programs that actually ask for these GRE subject scores.
Okay. Um, Now, moving on, there were some aspects of the application process. So, one thing is the LOR and how to draft an LOR. Sometimes the faculty may ask the student to draft it and send it to them. So, the student may have to do the drafting part of it. So, how do we
Right. It's a very tricky question actually, and not most of the faculty. I think all of the faculty I know usually ask the student to do it because they either don't have the time or they just don't know how an LOR works. So it's for anybody who's kind of working right now. You would know that your LOR is like your self-appraisal letter, right? It's like writing your own achievements, writing your own contributions in the eyes of a third person, right? That's what you have to do. And writing an LOR can be tricky because you have to, again, just like your SOP, your LOR has to also be aligned with your program, right? So I'll give you my example. I applied to two kinds of programs, right? Engineering management and analytics. So one of my recommenders was my project guide, Ratna Reddy sir. So he taught me programming subjects and he was also my project guide. So for the analytics program, I made it a point that the LOR stressed more on the fact that I have done programming, that I have scored really well in my programming languages. and that my convolutional neural networks project was also a representation of my interest in analytics. Right, so that's what I focused on there. Whereas on my engineering management LOR, I focused on the leadership potential that this guy has taken lead in his project. He's the president of student association. He has original ideas in in some of the core engineering subjects as well. So you see the difference, right? Uh, for starters, it has to align with your program, and secondly, you basically have to write whatever that you have done. You have to use, there are these tenets, these keywords that people use in LORs. I can share the list after this session. But usually it's all about your academic prowess, your leadership prowess, or just the originality of your ideas. It has to revolve around these three.
Um, those were some really great points. And now, when you have to ask a faculty member an LOR, we are definitely taught by a lot of faculty members. So, and also we have a lot of colleagues from our workplace. So, whom do you exactly ask for an LOR? Who is the right person to go about?
Simple. The one that you have the best rapport with. Because at the end of the day, they have to be okay with what you have written, right? And they have to give you the freedom and the privilege to write your own LOR, right? And often, so it happens that some of these points may be extrapolated, maybe just slightly accentuated, and in that case, your recommended has to be okay with that because that is his general practice. If he's slightly I would pardon my language, but if he's a hard ass and if he's very strict about what you use in what the like every bit of content in your LOR, then well, just the aesthetic of your LOR is lost, right? And also approach somebody who you can actually discuss the LOR with. I mean, ideally, an LOR should be like a discussion between your the recommender and the student, right? Where the student tells, "Ki, I can maybe write about this," and the recommender, gives your feedback. Ki, yes, you can probably write about this idea that you took in your project. So ideally, it should be that, right? So if you have a rapport with somebody who can, involve with you in this process, nothing like it.
Yes, that perfectly answers that. And now moving on, an SOP is like one of the most important parts of the application, considering that a lot of colleges are now waiving GRE, so the emphasis on your essays a lot more. So, how did you go about? Like, what was your thought process, and how long did you take?
Okay, so SOP is like an iterative process, right? You have to come up with a draft, and as you keep going through it, as you keep sending it to your seniors, it keeps getting better. But that's about developing your LOR. But the very crux of LOR is about three things, right? One is the contemplation, right? You have to have a lot of soul searching because what an LOR essentially does is what
Yes.
an SOP essentially does is that it makes you question about the most fundamental motivations of things that you do. Like why did you take up this, why did you take up engineering? Why this branch, right? Why are you going for an MS right now? Why not after 2 years? You should be crystal clear with answers to these questions, right? What really helps in SOP, by the way, for those who are still in your first or second year and are very far from your MS applications, journal writing or diary entries, some people call it, is really helpful in these things because when you come to your final year, we as humans have a tendency to forget, and we're just like, what have I even done in college? A lot of people actually end up asking this question, including myself. But the fact that I had a journal and I had been writing about my experiences in college just gave me a flashback of all the things that I've done. So um, contemplation, introspection, soul searching, this happens a lot with your SOP. The second is researching your university, right? What is the university famous for? What does it specialize in? What are the extracurricular clubs? You can also maybe reach out to the faculty beforehand, with a project idea or something like that. And the third step is aligning your motivations and what the university is looking for. If I had to sum up an SOP, it would be alignment. When you align and your intentions align with what the university has to offer, that's basically what you have to do in an SOP.
Okay, so now a lot of the points in the SOP of how we align ourselves to the program the college is offering. Uh, do you think having a lot of experiences in general can be good when you're writing an SOP? So if a student is just in college attending classes and doing academics, they may not have a lot of things to align with. So what kind of experiences, like will work experience or internships, or what can we use to elaborate in our
Right,
SOPs?
right. So just going back to these four pillars of an application, there's academics, there's extracurriculars, work experience, and leadership, right? So work experience includes your internships and your projects and all of that. So yes, experiences help you basically frame your SOP. Without experiences, your application is just, a statement, I have this much GPA, I have this much GRE, please give admission. Right. So it's your experiences that really, give the content for your SOP. So as you said, if this experience is at an internship or at work, then it adds value to the work experience pillar. If it's something about your extracurriculars, it talks about your varied interests, your passions, and your leadership. And if it's about your technical project, then it or maybe some subject that you took, or just a area that you're really interested in, then it talks about your academics. So in essence, your SOP should touch upon everything. Like my first paragraph in my essay was about the subjects that I took in college. The second paragraph was about these projects I did at work and at college. The third paragraph was about my extracurriculars and how, say, I was the editor in chief at Transcendence, so I would love to be the editor love to be involved with the newsletter at CMU, which is called the Tartan. Or I was the president of student association here, so I would love to join the graduate student assembly at CMU. So this is the alignment that I'm talking about. Even with technical projects, that now that I have done a bit of machine vision systems in Unilever, I would love to work with Professor Sean Gao at CMU, who specializes in predictive analytics. Right. So this is, you can touch upon all four pillars of your application in your SOP, and as you said, experiences are the ones that help you create your SOP.
I think when you describe the structure of how your SOP is like, I think all students can also think about how whether they have experiences or they can touch upon things and participate in a lot more things, or just build up content, or just figure out regarding their SOPs. Now,
Just a tip for your SOP when you're actually talking about experiences in your SOP. There's this thing called a star format, right? So it goes like situation, task, action, and result. That's your star format. So whenever you're actually talking about an experience, you have to structure it in this way. For example, if I spoke about my the analytics project that I had at Unilever in my SOP. So again, so what was the situation? The situation was that we were having a lot of defects on the line, and we wanted to put some sort of an automated system. What was the task? The task was to implement machine vision systems on a line. What was the action that I did? I did a lot of feature extraction. I worked with the developer. We developed the model. We deployed the model. What was the result? We reduced the defects per million units by 25%. That was the stat which almost summed up the work that I had done for my project. So the star format is something that they probably teach in the consultancy sessions. If you at all joined a consultancy, so something that you can keep in mind.
um, the way the star format is kind of organizing our like the whole experience into like four very important points, and
Yes.
that's definitely something we should follow. And since you mentioned about a consultancy experience, the SOP itself is very complicated, especially if a student has a lot of diverse experiences and they are not able to narrow down and make an SOP. Do you
Hmm.
think they can delegate the task to some SOP writer or an organization who specialize in that part?
Well, for starters, no consultancy will actually write the SOP for you. I mean, I've heard that there are some people who do that, but no good consultancy will actually write the SOP for you, right? In fact, I don't recommend somebody else writing the SOP entirely for you. What they will do is basically expedite the process of this alignment that I was talking about. They will give you questionnaires. They will have interaction sessions with you where they will ask the same question that I just spoke about. Ki, why did you take up engineering? Why this branch? Why do you want to go for this course? What extracurriculars have you done? Can you talk about, like, say, 2 3 experiences in this particular extracurricular activity? What did you gain out of it? So they will make you introspect, as opposed to you doing the introspection on your own. And eventually they will give you some formats for SOPs, some general templates, and over iterations, over corrections, like a month and a half, they will have an SOP in hand. So a consultancy, yes, at a cost, of course, they will help you expedite your process of getting the perfect SOP. But can it be done without them? Yes, it's slower.
So you recommend taking support and doing it on your own at the end of it, like just take their support, but not just delegate it entirely to some other person.
Yes, I mean, all the good consultancies I know don't actually write the SOP for you. So, yes, if you end up coming across some consultancy firm that claims that they can write an SOP, just run away, go to a better one.
So now coming to the application process at CMU. So was it any different from the other colleges that you applied to, and were there any other rounds or of documentation, extra documents that they asked?
Um, I think only the one aspect differed from other universities is that you had to send in your transcripts as a part of your application process itself. For others, this process of sending your transcripts usually comes after you get the admit. But CMU has it upfront. It wants your GPA even converted into the US scale before they can start evaluating your application. So that was something that was very tedious for me because I was somewhere else. I was in Gujarat when this was happening. So I had to delegate this task to my friends. They had to come. They had to collect my no due certificate. So anybody trying to apply to CMU while not in the city, just a heads up. And yes, there was a video essay and there was also a small interview at the end.
So once you like identified your interest in data analytics, did you, apart from like your work experience already aligning with a little bit with data analytics, did you do any personal projects or do any online courses just to add some certification to your resumes?
Right. I actually ended up doing that because I quit my job last month because I wanted to do, some projects and do some courses. So I did a project in relational database management and some unstructured data analytics. I did a course from Berkeley in that, and I'm also taking the free course on Coursera from, Andrew NG on machine learning for beginners. So yes, I am delving into that. I also, I'm aware of the subjects that I have at CMU this semester, data focused Python and DBMS. So in essence, I picked these courses just to prepare me for what is coming, in like 15 days for me.
Okay, so this is all after getting an admit, but before that, did you like tailor your resume to add any of these certifications, or was your experience the way you conveyed your data analytics
Yes,
side of it?
I mean, it was all about my experiences, as you said, all experiences conveyed through my SOP. That was my sole, chance of getting into these programs. So for me, my SOP was everything. Certifications and a lot of relevant work experience was obviously lacking for a core engineer like me. So yeah, it was all my experiences.
I think that really motivates a lot of students. They we may just think of ourselves in have feelings of inadequacy, but we have to just find ways of finding how our experiences align and have good
Absolutely.
experience.
Yes, you have to have a lot of faith in your experiences and just know this from, take this from me, it's never too late. You know, uh, Analytics is an upcoming field. If not at CMU, there's like a tons of there are a ton of colleges who give online certifications also. There are colleges across all countries. It's the most upcoming field in the world. So if some of you actually feel like you're made for something like that, it's not too late. If anything, you're at the right stage. Making a transition early up in your career is the right thing to do. You can't do it after working for 5 years in the industry. That would probably be unwise. So the entire world is open to you. You can make that shift whenever you want.
That was something that's a great news for a lot of students actually. So now, Carnegie Mellon and most other Ivy League universities are really expensive. You know, the living expenses and the tuition are both very high. So, do you recommend students to still go ahead with very expensive master's programs if they don't have a lot of savings or family funds that they can rely on?
Well, yes, it is a matter of concern. Finances, having finances is a matter of privilege. But this is again where your research comes into play, right? When you are researching universities, the first page, at least I went to, was the career outcomes page, you know, and in fact, CMU was the only college which had a comprehensive, career outcomes page where there were, average salaries given, the companies that come, the roles that were offered, average salary split, based on work experience, how much was 0 to 2, 2 to 5, 5 to 7, etc. So I basically had a very clear picture as to, the fresher salaries and the roles that, analysts get after CMU, which is what kind of gave me the confidence. Yes, the investment is huge, but make sure that the return on investment is, equivalent to that. Because ideally, you want to, get your payback period for your degree should be like 2 years, which means how much ever you invested, you should earn it back in like 2 years, right? That should be your aim. So yeah, just make sure that the course that you're doing is also, in demand. So analytics is obviously it's very hot right now. Fortunately, there are a lot of opportunities out there. But say if you're doing a course in, sustainability engineering, right? It's an upcoming field, but it's not paying that much right now. But again, pay is secondary. If you're really passionate about it, gamble on yourself. You will earn it back, and it's an investment which is, it's like a one-time investment for your life, right? Starting a career in a country like the UK, the United States, Canada, it's, I mean, people dream of it. And if you think that you're ready for it, finances should not really hold you back. I've had friends who have funded themselves completely. Like the only thing that their parents have done is co-signed a loan. They have taken whatever 40, 50 lakh rupees, they've taken that with them in a different country, earned it all back, and now support their family in India. Right. So if you have your belief in yourself like that, go ahead.
Um, this may be a personal question, but how are you financing your masters? Is it mostly a loan, or how are you going about it?
Right. So fortunately, I did get a 15% scholarship, and I am planning to, matlab, I have planned to fund my entire program with a scholarship itself.
So this scholarship, was it provided by CMU itself, or was it a external scholarship by a third party
No, no, this was
company?
a CMU scholarship only.
So there is a possibility that international students like us who apply at colleges that do most of these colleges offer these scholarships, or is it specific to courses and colleges?
It is specific to university actually, and also the department that you're applying to, right? So, a lot of different colleges have different means to apply for scholarships. Like for colleges like Purdue and Purdue and Columbia, your main application form in itself is your application for a scholarship, right? So every applicant who basically applies to their university is considered for a scholarship, right? So other colleges like say Cornell have a separate form for scholarship, right? Dartmouth has a third party application where you have to apply externally and then Dartmouth considers you for a scholarship. So in essence, every college does have scholarship. It depends. I mean, Dartmouth offers, 40 to 50%. It can almost, some people have even got 70%. CMU can also waive off like half of your, half of your fees. So again, research about what is the cap on the scholarship that every university has, what are the different ways to apply for your scholarship, and make your decision accordingly.
So, on an average, how many students end up with scholarships, or is it a need-based scholarship where you have to disclose your annual income and on that basis to be given?
Right, that's a good question. So there are two types of scholarship, need-based and merit-based. Right. So what I have is a merit-based scholarship, but need-based scholarships are also, I think that there are like 40% of the entire scholarship fund goes to the need-based scholarships. So in that case, you can actually, you have to show your bank balance, and you have to show your salary and income certificates, and you would be considered for a need-based scholarship. And for merit scholarships, it's all about your, GPA, GRE, recommendations and all of that.
So for a merit-based scholarship, you didn't have to do any separate application. It was your SOP and your application that gave you the merit scholarship.
Yes, yes. So CMU, as I said, every application for CMU is considered for a financial aid. So, fortunately, my GPA in US equivalent grade was 4.0. So I think that is what helped my case for, a bit of financial aid.
So a higher CG and a really good application can, make the cut for a scholarship like that.
Yes, absolutely. At the end of the day, a good CGPA is just going to save you some money.
That's like so motivating for students to just start working on their academics now. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, this is a slightly different question, and you mentioned to me that you had interactions with your, you had some introductory classes and things. So, what types of profiles ended up with the course that you got or ended up in CMU? So, what are the specific applications or profiles which stand out in terms of a CMU, stand out for the CMU selection?
Okay, okay. So you're asking how my cohort looks like currently, like my classmates and people who I'll be attending my class with.
Yeah. So like the profiles and how different and how do they stand out? How each individual stands out? So,
All right, all right. Okay. So it's all pretty diverse actually. This is a very good question. So one of my batchmates is actually, already a data analyst, and he's working for a very hot insurance company in the US itself, US company based in India. And he wanted to get a formal education. He was a CSE grad, and he got into data analytics. And of course, not all CSE grads have the basic, they may have missed out on the electives that, you take. So he wants to do a course for that. He has a great extracurricular profile. He is a drummer for a band, he's a great musician himself. So that's how we bonded there. So that's one of them. There's yet another student who's from JPMC, and she is again, she's very bright in her field. She had a GRE score of 330. I know I'm giving random details, but this question, I'm just trying to recall everything that I can from this, icebreaker session that we had, a week ago. So these are all pretty good profiles. And if you actually want to have a look at the average profile of people who get into certain colleges, I recommend the application Yocket for everybody. It's an application where you can select a university, select a program, and it will show you the admits and the rejects for that. And then you can actually select the admitted students and look at their GRE scores, look at their GPA, look at what they've worked, where they have worked, what kind of work they've done. So this actually helped me narrow down a lot of other colleges as well. So I didn't apply for this program at Stanford, for mass management and science and engineering. After looking at the average profiles of a lot of students, most of them were from premier institutes in India, and their GRE was touching 335, 336 on an average. And well, GPA was comparable, but just based on these two things, I decided it was probably best if I didn't apply. Whereas on the other hand, there were some colleges, what was it? Yeah, it was the business analytics program at Purdue. So the program had very, I mean, in comparison to my GRE scores, the average GRE scores were lesser, with around 307, 310, and the profiles were also perhaps not too great. So I decided to also skip Purdue because maybe it was not the best program for me. So going on Yorkit really helps. It has blogs where people write about their experiences in programs. So
So, like knowing the average profile can help us, find out where we stand with our application. So that would be.
absolutely, yes. I mean, it's still very, it's not a very ideal way to look at profiles, where you're looking at averages and then you compare yourself. That's not the ideal way, but it at least tells you where you stand in comparison with the general admitted students.
Now, I would like to ask some questions that have been posted by our audience in chat. One question is, can you share your detail, like your scores in GRE and IELTS and TOEFL, or whichever you give?
Sure, sure. So I got a 325 on out of 340 in GRE, and my TOEFL score was 116 out of 120, and well, my GPA was 9.27.
And what are some good consultancy services we can consider when you're applying abroad?
Right. So based on personal testimonials of myself and my friends, Gradvine, MIM SA are one of the top ones. I have a couple of them. I have a few different in my head right now, but I'm just not able to recall their exact names. I'll put it on the group. I'll text it to you later on. You can probably share it with people.
Yeah. So now moving on, do you recommend students to work and then go for masters, or just move out as soon as they get a degree?
Right. So as I spoke earlier, working definitely adds value to your profile, given that it's relevant work experience. Right. If you want to make a switch like me, it's probably the best, if you not work and go straight up, but make sure you have enough projects to speak about. Like I'll give you an example. If had I gone for engineering management, if I wanted to go for engineering management, I would probably not go straight after work. I would want to work in a factory and get some relevant work experience. What that's going to do is, it's going to give you good work experience, and also put you into a different orbit. You can actually aim for better colleges when you start applying, colleges that were probably out of your league an year earlier.
So, as long as our job is in the fields which we are planning to pursue, it's always better to have
Yeah,
like an experience.
absolutely.
So, there's another question for mechanical engineers in specific. Is it better to do a master's in probably an elite college and then go for a job, or can they just go for a job directly?
Okay, so there are a lot of jobs which are available for freshers, but of course, if you do a master's degree, you enter a different market altogether. You go as a graduate student, and there are different opportunities and different pay scales for graduate students. So it really comes down to this one thing, where what do you want to do? Do you want to go just start up straight into a graduate pay scale, or do you want to work for a couple of years, and explore your interests? The downside of just going for a job after your master's is that you enter the industry for the first time after after your master's, and that is probably not ideal, because maybe you realize that this domain was not meant for you in the first place, and it's very tough to come back once you've done your master's degree. So if you want to play it safe, just work for a couple of years and see what you're getting into.
I think that's about those were the questions that were in the chat. And if there's anyone who may want to ask more questions, you can ask right now. One more question we have is, can you repeat the consultancy's name?
Yeah, yeah.
Gradwine and
Sure, sure. Gradvine and MIMSA. So that's the consultancy that I had gone to. They have a great portal. They have a consultant who's, specially assigned to you. I think they're pretty great. So you can give it a try.
Okay, I think I'm almost done with all the questions that I have, and we are almost towards the end of the interview. We have some more questions. Satvika, is it okay if I just go on, because we are definitely beyond the planned timeline which we.
Yeah, you can go ahead for like 5 more minutes.
So we have some more questions. Which admission do you prefer? Do you recommend to fall or spring?
Oh, that's a very good question, actually. I would recommend fall, because the time that the companies come to your college based on the fall timeline. That's the timeline that is there in their head, right? So, of course, spring students are also eligible to apply for those jobs when these recruiters come. But it so happens that when they come, the spring students are either too it's too early for them to apply for a job, or they come at a point where they've already finished their degree, and now they have to wait for the company to come for the fall. So the fall is timeline is the default one for recruiters, so you should probably play it safe and apply for fall. And also some courses are not even offered in spring, so keep that in mind as well.
So now the next question is, how much difference will it make if you choose a university based in which you have a scholarship versus a better university? Do universities have like a significant difference when it comes to like outcomes?
Yes, simple answer is yes. Universities do make a difference. Just take an example over here. CMU is slightly expensive to attend. Purdue is probably not that expensive, and it also gives a lot of scholarships. So if you ask anybody in the industry, they would know that Carnegie Mellon is known for its CS courses and the kind of analytics courses curriculum that it has. So the recruiters will also know about that. So when you apply for a job there, you are bound to have a better shot at landing that job when you're going from CMU. I just use CMU versus Purdue because that was a very fresh example in my head, but when you're talking about a better university, just look at the career outcomes. That should, be a significant enough factor.
So it's like since the student mentioned that they have a scholarship in some other probably less reputed university, so they can still choose the better one because the outcomes may be a lot different when compared to them.
Absolutely. And when you go to a better university, the need for scholarship also becomes slightly redundant because you have a better chance of landing a higher paying job. So, you'd want to take that, right? But again, taking the university with a scholarship is a safe way to play it. It's very relative, and it really depends on the context, exact context and the background of the student. But if it were me, I would probably go for the better university because, better chances of landing a good job.
So did you follow like a national ranking list or something when you were shortlisting colleges, or did you follow a particular order of
Okay, that's a
rank?
very interesting question because I don't think there's a national ranking that US colleges have. There are rankings by top magazines, top consultancy agencies, or just personal blogs, academicians giving their personal list about particular programs. So it turns out that one list had CMU at at number one. The other list had it at eight. There was yet another list which had it at like around 12 or something. So the numbers actually vary, and often it's they say that most of these lists are biased because there is somebody behind who's kind of funding them. So going through one list will not give you the clear picture. You have to go through. I went through like 10 to 15 lists, 10, 15 rankings, blogs on Medium about these programs and what people do in these programs. So you have to really widen your sample set, go through as many rankings as possible, and when you see a lot of repeating colleges, that's when you make your data set. That's like your basic colleges that you're going to apply, and then you start the further research. How much fees, how much base average salary, and all of that.
Well, that perfectly answers that. And now, due to time constraints, I don't think we can take any more questions, even though there are some. We will try to convey them to Abhijeet so that you can get a response from him later on. But for now, I think we have to wrap up. So, Satvika, would you like to take over?
Just a note, I mean, they can all reach out to me on Insta or whatever social media handle they prefer. I'll be more than glad to answer these personally.
Uh, Thank you guys. Thank you, Abhijit, so much.